Hello everyone, Phoenix61 here with another Minecraft tutorial. Today we are talking pumpkin and melon farms. I have three different ones to showcase to you today. This first one uses water streams, and I'm going to go through two different versions of each one of these, right? This second option is a tower, sort of modular tower system that you can just infinitely build as high as you want into the sky, and it will continuously farm more and more pumpkins and melons for you, right? And then the third option is going to be the king of kings here, right? The ultimate minecart version of this farm is going to be probably your most efficient if you really want to go nuts and want a ton of pumpkins and melons. So I'm going to go through sort of each of these and how they work, and then I will put time, and then we'll do tutorials for each of them, right? So that's why this video is kind of long. So we'll kind of showcase each one of these, and then you can decide which farm you want to build, and I'll put timestamps in the description. So anyway, with pumpkins and melons, the kind of nice thing is once you kind of get the idea behind how farming them automatically would work, you know, you can take this concept and kind of make these farms your own, right? So we'll use some bone meal on a melon plant there, and then you can see that the melon grows, right? And I put water there because that's always good for them to speed up their growth as well. And then ultimately, right, you're going to somehow power a piston that is going to then break the pumpkin and or melon, right? So really super easy concept here. To just kind of do that. So we'll do it this time here. I'll just grab a redstone block and put it next to it, right? So, but right, you're going to use some sort of either, you know, observers or timed mechanism, or I also have like a button push option for some of these farms too. So you can make it, you know, fully automatic or just by the push of a buttons, right? So first one here, this is the OG, the original gangster of pumpkin and melon farms. And again, this is another one that you can just stack infinitely vertically. However high you want, but basically, right, we're going to use observers above the plants, and then what will happen is they'll notice the plants change every time a pumpkin or melon grows, and then it will trigger the pistons off to the side and push them into a water stream, right? So I'm going to up the speed here, the game tick speed, right, just to kind of showcase how this one works here. So we'll put it at 100 instead of 1, right? But yeah, so you can see that the as a pumpkin grows, right, it's going to trigger the pistons, and then yeah, you can make moves. So we've got two layers here, right, and basically all you would do is continuously build higher and higher and higher, however high you want. So this one's easy to start out, you know, with just one level, and then you know, you can let it run however long, and then when you want to come back and build some more on top of it, you can build more and more and more, right? So I only had melons growing in that one, so alternatively, you know, you could do this way where you've got a button push that activates all of the pistons all at once, and then you know, the pumpkins and melons will fall down into your hopper. So almost like a very similar concept, right? But this way you don't need to hunt down materials for a bunch of observers. If you do notice that there are pumpkins and melons flying everywhere, right, you can kind of encase sort of the downfall chute in glass here like that. That'll help, you know, mitigate some loss there, right? But yeah, so two sort of options there, right? And you could do all pumpkins on one or all melons on the other. But the secret out there or whatever, right, if you believe in it, right, is if you alternate pumpkins and melons, they'll grow better, right? So the back of this one does require a little bit of extra redstone, right? But you don't need observers, and it actually is a little more compact. We have almost 3 levels for that one versus the 2, and it's the same height, right? And then option number 2, right, this is we're going to call this the tower farm, right? And so basically this is a really simple design for each level. So it's like super easy to, like, I'll show it to you once or twice, and then you'll have it memorized, and you'll be able to just build these levels infinitely, right? So as high as you want. But the fully automated version, right, is going to require some observers on these first levels. And then you can kind of customize these however you want, right? So like these are really essentially the same thing. This one is the button push version. I just added some extra like coverings over the tower, right? So I'll show you sort of the naked version of the tower, right? Without any like extra decorations on the outside. So we'll build through there, right? But yeah, pushing the button there is going to trigger all of the pistons in the entire tower, and then all of your items will drop down into the chest through some hoppers and a like a water, you know, a waterfall stream or whatever that goes down the middle of the tower, right? So again, we'll kind of showcase this one, right? We'll up the game tick speed here just a little bit to kind of show how it works here. We won't go too crazy on this one, but basically what's going to happen, right, with these automatic ones that are using observers, each time a pumpkin or melon grows on the first level, it's going to trigger the pistons for all levels. And it actually triggers them twice, which is actually really beneficial because that does a lot of cleanup with extra items that kind of get left behind, right? So they'll trigger twice, and usually they can push all the items, right? You're going to have a little bit of loss there, right? You're going to have some. That's kind of the downfall of this version of the tower. But right, if you just build it taller, right, or build another one, and you'll be fine. You'll have, no matter what, you're going to have plenty of pumpkins and melons to spare, just depending on how big you go with these, right? So you could build a tower that's all pumpkins, or you could build a tower that's all melons. That way they would be sorted out for you automatically. But again, the best thing to do, so I've heard, is to alternate in the same farm pumpkins and melons, right? And then the third option, this is going to be our minecart rail farm, right? And basically what this is doing is, as the minecart drives over top of these pistons, we're using activator rails to trigger the pistons. Then it's going to drive down under the next level and simultaneously collect the items from the level above, so you can see the items up there getting collected, and then it's activating the pistons on the level below, so it's kind of doing double duty. And then at the very bottom, right, you'll just have one more run around the farm solely for collection, right? And you can see some melons hanging on the edge there, right? So some glass would work and be beneficial on the outside of the farm as well. And then we've got a minecart hopper unloader here, right? Minecart unloader. So basically the way this is going to work, this is also super easy to build, so I'll walk you through it as well. But basically, the minecart's going to sit there and unload into your chest until it is empty, and then it's just going to automatically go and run its course through the farm again, right? So super, super convenient, easy, fully automatic. All you got to do is come over here and pick up your items out of the chest, right? Alternatively, you can build this, similar design using observers. So I'll kind of show you a little bit of this at the end of the video as well. But basically, right, instead of having, this obnoxious sound of pistons constantly going while your minecart drives around, right, they'll only trigger the pistons when a pumpkin or melon actually grows. And then your minecart is solely going around the farm specifically just to pick up the items, right? So it's not triggering the pistons, so you don't get that obnoxious, right, piston sound, right? And then same thing there, the minecart unloader is a little bit different there, but there's kind of two different ways you can do it on Bedrock, right? There's one way I like to do it, and then there's an alternative way here, but, right, so that would be your alternate way to do that farm. Okay. So this is going to be our first build here. We are going to do the OG, right, the water stream farm. Got a materials list kind of set out as best I can here, right? But you're going to need pistons, observers, some redstone, right, fence gates, right, and then some hoppers, right, and then whatever kind of solid block you want to use, just bring a bunch, right? I'm not sure the exact amount of the solid blocks, just 64 is probably more than you would need, right? And then if you want the button variant, right, you're going to need you're going to need at least one repeater per level and one redstone torch per level. Then of course you only need one button, right? So we'll bring all of this stuff into our hotbar and start working on this one, right? So this is going to be five blocks wide here. And I actually forgot the most important thing, which is a chest here. So put a chest. So that's going to be the first thing we do, is drop our chest right in the middle there, right at the front of the farm. And then I went with 2 hoppers in the back that seemed to work a little bit better in picking up. Sometimes things would get stuck in certain places, so 2 hoppers worked best there, right? And then you're going to go all the way to the back, right? So, you need, what is it, 8 blocks that the water will travel, right? So we're going to put our dirt here along this edge like this. Whoops, missed there. And then right up to that second hopper, right? And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. And then you can kind of test this out now. You can put your water bucket here, right? So, and then it should stop right at the second hopper like that. So that's your initial test that makes sure that you did this the right size, right? And then your pistons are going to go, you're going to need 4 pistons per each side here. And you're going to need them every other spot. So, right, like, if you want to make this easy, you could use dirt as just like a temporary ledge here. So it makes it easier to place your pistons down. And then you could use like jack-o'-lanterns here, right, to keep the area lit up. So, right, you make jack-o'-lanterns from, you know, it's a torch and then a carved pumpkin, right? You use flint and steel on a pumpkin. So we'll do the same thing on the other side, right? You just kind of need to remember that pumpkins and melons need some light in order to grow. So you do need to light up your farm a little bit here, right? The pistons start on the very first edge here. 4 pistons like that, right? So then you've got your farm there. And then we're going to put in the fence gates now, right? They're kind of awkward to place, right? You have to be facing the right direction as you place them. And then in order to not open the fence gate, you need to be crouched, right, to place the next one. So it's a little bit awkward to do this, but these are super helpful in making sure the items actually fall into the water stream. If you don't put fence gates here, they kind of go, it's not like 100% needed, but if you don't put them there, you'll get a little bit more loss. It'll be a little more efficient this way, right? And then next we can actually start planting, and you want to plant the plants in between the pistons, right? You don't want the pistons to be pointing at the plant. And then, of course, yes, you want to alternate pumpkins and melons, pumpkins and melons. You absolutely don't have to do that. Whoops, we pushed the wrong button there. You don't have to alternate, right? They just grow a little bit better. So I've heard, right, if you alternate pumpkin, melon, right? But if you want them sorted out automatically for you, right, you could just, it's not that much different, right? You could just plant all pumpkins and all melons and build 2 of these farms separately, right? And then we'll get rid of this dirt here, right? You don't need this. It was just temporary. We don't want pumpkins or melons growing in those spots, so we'll clear that out. And we'll do the observer version here first, because it's actually, the redstone's, it's almost easier, right? But basically you want your observer pointing down at each plant here, right? So you want to make sure you see the face of the observer looking down at the plant like that. And then, so yeah, get on top of each plant here and just click on the plant basically, right? If you've already planted the plants, this works perfectly this way. Click on each of those. So then we're going to have our farm looking like that. Not too much left to do on this one. You're going to want your solid blocks next to each observer here like this. We'll do both sides. Like so. And then you're going to need redstone dust, right? You need it on top of each of these surfaces here. So on top of the observer, and then on top of the pistons, and on top of those solid blocks, right? So make sure you get every single spot. Do the same thing again on the other side. Don't forget the pistons like I almost did. Right, there you go. She is up and running. That is it. That is it for each level there. So if you were going to do the next level, what you would want to do here is start building your next, like the water flow stream would be just above this level, right? So this is the level that would hold your water in. And then you don't need the hoppers, again, down at the bottom, right? So you would just stop right there in line with your first row. And then your dirt would be up here on this next slot here. And then you would quite literally just mirror exactly how you built this farm, right? Exactly how you built the row below. Right, so that one... This one actually here would be our solid block like that, right? We're just exactly mirroring the level below. And then you can always check it again, right, with your water bucket. Put your water in there. So that does double duty, right? It moves your items, right? It moves the items to the end so they can fall into the hopper. And then it's also hydrating the soil so that the pumpkins and melons grow, right? And then, of course, yes, you can always glass this in if you notice items kind of flopping around and falling all over the place. You could do that all the way up if you wanted to as well. And then you could also put glass right between the pistons here for this version. And then up on top here too, in case items kind of fly out too fast or whatever, right? That'll kind of corral them over top of the hopper is what you want to happen there, right? And then another, you do need to light this up as well, right? If you want them growing at night, or especially if you encase this, like if you build something around this or like put it underground or in a structure, right? You need some light. So you can put, you know, torches for real cheap. You could put torches on the observers here like this. That won't hurt anything, right? And that'll give plenty of light for the pumpkins and melons to grow. And then alternatively, you could do jack-o'-lanterns again here too, right? You could put jack-o'-lanterns in between each of those pistons, and that would kind of wall it in as well. That would work really well also, right? So jack-o'-lanterns are really good for light. Okay, so next we're going to do the button push version, right? So what you would do is build up your farm exactly like you did before with the pistons on the edges here. And then I do recommend using jack-o'-lanterns or some sort of redstone conducting light block, right? So I think like glowstone or mushroom lights or something, right? Don't use... just don't use sea lanterns. I think sea lanterns are the only ones that don't conduct redstone, right? But I would use a light block because this one's gonna be a little bit more compact, right? Jack-o'-lanterns are probably the cheapest. You do need a solid block on the edge of this side by the piston, and then you need to sort of connect each row with solid blocks here. So I'm gonna build out one more block out towards the back, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But build out like this, and then that's going to be basically a line of redstone all the way on top of that. You can fill in these like gaps here like I'm doing there, but you don't absolutely have to, right? But it will keep your farm a little bit more compact, and it'll like kind of encase the pumpkins and melon plants in there, right? So then you're going to need a block here, and then you're going to want just lined redstone all around this whole thing, and then you do need one repeater going into the solid block at the back. And then, so that's going to extend your redstone signal far enough to reach the rest of these pistons. And then that's also part of how we get redstone signal up to the next level as well. Test it out by pushing the button and make sure that all of the pistons fire and that you've got your plants planted in the correct places as well, so it's not destroying the plants. Because as we build this out, right, it's going to get even more, it's going to get harder to get in there and replant, right? So we're going to put solid blocks like this, and this is actually going to be, this is a little bit more compact, right? So we can actually make our dirt start at this level here like this. So we'll place the dirt down each side. And again, for this part, we are exactly mirroring what we've done below, right? So I'm putting some temporary blocks in here just to get it going, right? But exactly, follow the pattern exactly right. We'll put a solid block there. That's where the water is going to start. Like so. And then you're going to want redstone torches on top of this. Solid block on top of that redstone. And then a redstone torch on top of that. See how that one is not lit up? So once we push the button at the start of the farm, that's going to actually trigger that one to light up, and then that will be our source signal for the pistons on level 2 here. So again, we're going to build this out just like we would, right? We're going to use jack-o'-lanterns again for light to make sure the pumpkins can grow. Right, if you leave this out in the open, you probably don't need jack-o'-lanterns, right? You could probably just use solid blocks. But yeah, if it's dark, they're not going to grow, right? Don't forget that the pumpkins and melons need light, guys. Pumpkins and melons need light. You can again fill this area in. That won't hurt anything. And then here again, we're going to do the jack-o'-lanterns for the light, and then we'll alternate with pistons. You guys know the routine now at this point, right? Just like that. So we'll grab our water block and just test this out, make sure we built it right. You don't want water spilling over. You want it right to the edge there. And then again, fence gates, don't forget to put these in. right? So you'd put those in. We don't need to do all of them, right? I'm just going to kind of show you. You know the routine now at this point. You'll put your redstone all the way across this, right? Like this, both ends leading up to that redstone torch that's off. And then again, test it out by pushing the button. You should see both levels of pistons firing when you push that button. Now, row number 3 gets a little bit wonky here, just because of the redstone torch layout, and this is kind of why we have an extra space there. But again, for your pumpkin, like for the growth level, right? It's exactly the same that we did before. You're going to put up, the next level up is going to be your solid blocks that are going to have the water on top of it, and then your dirt down the sides. I'm just doing this as like temporary blocks here to get I'm just going to kind of show you here, right? So this is where you're going to start with your jack-o'-lantern or light block, right? And then piston, and then alternate again, right? So I'm not going to build this whole row out. You know the pattern now, but I'm going to show you how to, just the redstone in the back is just a little bit different for this next row. So there you would have your pumpkins, or your pistons alternating, right? And then we'll build the rest of this out here like this. So what you'll do here, put solid block on top of the redstone, and then another redstone torch on top of that solid block. And then, yeah, so see how this one here, now we're going to do a redstone torch on top of that. That's going to be the one that we need to use. And it's just it's not right at the perfect level, right? So what we have to do basically is just kind of connect them down like this, right? So as you build this tower up with the, if you want to do the button push version, you have to you just have to kind of pay attention to what level the torch that's going to be out is at, and then just kind of adjust accordingly like we did there, right? So the next level, it might be perfect, it might line up perfectly. You just kind of have to play with it, right? That's kind of easy to do and easy to figure out, right? So you would just build the rest of that third level out, and then again test the button push to make sure that it does all 3 levels of pistons, and there you have it, right? So then you would just do your planting, right? We forgot to do our planting on the second and third row there. Make sure you do that, and you're good to go. Next, we're gonna do the tower variant. This is actually, once you get the sort of base of the tower built, this becomes super, super easy to scale up to however high you want for this thing. And again, button push version. The button push version is actually a little bit easier to build, but I still would recommend the fully automatic version with the observers. I think it's like 7. We'll take a peek here. Yeah, we've got 7 observers. Right, 8 redstone repeaters, 12 pistons, right? So, and then dirt. So I think this is enough stuff to build 3 levels. And so then you would just, continue to, you'll figure it out, right? You'll just continue to build up and collect more, stuff to build those next levels however high you want, right? So this is super easy and super compact, right? This is a 5x5 area for this one. Chest in the middle, and then 2 hoppers pointing into that chest. Remember to crouch so that they point into the chest, and then you're going to basically fill in the rest of this bottom level with just whatever solid block you want to build with. Easy peasy, just like that, right? Super easy to start out with this one. Next thing we're going to do is you want glass above the chest, otherwise you won't be able to open it. That's the only kind of caveat there. And then you're going to just do solid blocks again around the outside of this. This is going to be where our redstone sits, basically. And then I would definitely fill this in as well here, because otherwise you're going to have water in there and it's not going to feed into the hoppers correctly, right? Then solid blocks on each side like that. That's going to be our first set of pistons are going to go on top of that. And then now you can actually place some of the redstone. So you get 2 redstone dust there, repeater pointing into that block, right? Do repeaters just like this, and then redstone, right? That way all 4 sides, you don't need them in that back corner there, right? You just need all 4 sides to have redstone. And then I did forget a button in my materials list. So I went and grabbed the button. Button's going to go right there on that block. And then just make sure that all of the redstone lights up when you push the button. Now we can place our first row of dirt where pumpkins and melons are going to grow. Right, you're always going to leave that middle space open because that's where the pumpkins and melons are going to fall through. Piston on top of each of these pointing in. And then make sure the pistons fire, right? And so that's super, super easy redstone, and that's all the redstone you need for this build, for the button push one, right? We'll show you how to do the observer one next, but basically that's it, right? So, but yeah, put your plants on each corner, and then you're gonna do redstone torches on top of each of these pistons. And then a solid block or a light block, so like a jack-o'-lantern, right, is going to be just fine, right? Again, don't use sea lanterns because I don't think they conduct redstone signal. But this way, your farm would have plenty of adequate lighting to make sure that your pumpkins and melons are growing even at night and if you encase it, right? So then now you're going to do your layer of dirt, your next layer of dirt. Just like so. And then again, your pistons are going to go on top of these redstone torches that are not on, right? Like so. And then plant in each corner. Alternate pumpkins and melons for the best results, right? Otherwise, if you want them all the same, that's fine too. It still works. Test it out. Make sure that all the pistons fire when you push the button. Redstone torches on top of these, and that is it, right? Like that, you just keep repeating this. And that will work forever, up however high you want it to. Right? This is a super, super easy pattern. You're just alternating pistons and your jack-o'-lanterns. And then when you get to the levels that the redstone torches are out, that's where you put dirt. And then you put your pistons on top of said redstone torches. Like so. There you have it, right? And you're going to push these and make sure that all the pistons fire, right? You're going to get to the point where you don't need to test it, right? So then once you do get up to the point where you want to stop building, that's when you're going to put your water source block in between, in the middle of the dirt, right? Don't put one on every level, only put it at the top. And then if you do decide to come back later and add to it, right, make sure you remove that water source with a bucket, then build up however many new levels you want, and then add the water source back at the very top one again, right? Right, so you can build that up as high as you want. Yeah, and so if you're going to keep building, remove the water, build up however high you want, then add the water bucket only at the top spot, right? If you start adding water at multiple spots, you're going to have it spilling everywhere and it's going to ruin all your redstone, right? All right, now for the version of this tower that I would recommend with observers. It's the same thing all the way up to this point, except now you need an extra block here on the back. Redstone in there. Repeater into each one. Basically want a repeater going into each of the solid blocks as you go around here, right? So it's going to look like that. Okay, and then next we can put down the pistons again here. Pistons go in the same spot, and it's the same concept here with the redstone torches on top of each one, right? And then once you do the plants here, you're going to have your plants in each corner, and then you're going to do the observers on top looking down at each plant. Like so. Once you've got those in place, right, we're going to use glass in between each observer. Like that. You could, you just want, yeah, you want to, so it's going to look like this, right? And then you need repeaters going into that back right corner, basically. So a repeater on top of each piece of glass and place them like so, so that their signals all leading into that corner right there. And then you're going to do redstone dust on top of each of the observers. And then that's going to be what's triggering our our redstone signals, right? You need another observer right here pointed at that redstone. If you can get it just right, you can do it, right? So he's going to be looking towards that redstone there, and then make sure your observers that are above the plants are all looking down at the plants. And then you just need 2 more observers, and we're done with redstone. You want them pointing up towards that other observer that's sticking out there. And that is it. That is the redstone done for the fully automatic version of this, right? So now you would do the exact same pattern that we were doing before on the button push version of the tower, where you're just alternating between jack-o'-lanterns and pistons and redstone torches, right? You can test this out by using bone meal on these on the plants, right? Because it'll make them grow, and the observers will see the change, and they'll trigger the pistons. So it's a good way to sort of test it out. Bone meal up each plant just to kind of make sure it's all working correctly, and make sure each of the all pistons fire every time you kind of change the plant or bone meal the plant, right? It's a good way to test it out. All right, so once that's all working and you've confirmed it is working, right, we can start doing, I'm going to do this one with solid blocks just to kind of show you the difference of how it looks, but this is where we were placing jack-o'-lanterns previously, right? I would recommend the jack-o'-lanterns for the extra light, because that's what's going to be best for growth for your pumpkins and melons. But here, again, same exact pattern we were doing before, where you're going to put the dirt on the levels that have the redstone torches that are out. Again, pistons on top of the burnt out redstone torches, like so. And then same exact thing again, right? So put your plants in each corner, alternate pumpkins and melons, redstone torches on top of the pistons, and then your solid blocks on top of those redstone torches. Right, you're going to need a really tall ladder or some scaffolding or something as you build this out. Just be careful when you're doing it in survival. You also kind of have to watch out, right? Those pistons are going to be firing here and there as your pumpkins and melon plants below you start growing. So just keep an eye out for those pistons going off and pushing you in directions you don't want. But again, pistons on top of the burnt out torches. Like that, right? So I would recommend, instead of those solid blocks, putting in using jack-o'-lanterns. I think that's better just for the light. But if you really hate how it looks, right, you could kind of light this up a little bit different, and I'll show you that. But yeah, let's say we're done here at the top. We will do the water bucket at the very top level, and then we'll put our plants in there. Right, so if you don't do the jack-o'-lanterns, right, you could do you could put torches in here. There's a couple of safe spaces, right? You could put torches like that to light this up, on these inside ones where you would have had jack-o'-lanterns. That's fine there. That won't hurt anything. The only challenge there is on the very first level where the observers are, which is really important. There's not as much room down here, right? There's no room for torches in there, so you would have to use some sort of light block against the sides here like this. Right, so either, the mushroom lights or the frog lights or glowstone or a jack-o'-lantern there. And then I would glass each level in too. Just that way, that's going to keep pumpkins and melons that are pushed out by the pistons, right? That's going to keep them within the farm there. That'll help your rates a little bit. So I would do that too. Like, right, it's not a must, but it'll help keep things kind of contained, right? So you could, if you're, planning that, do that with every level. That way you don't have to go around after you've built it, right? Plan it out. And then, yeah, you could kind of sort of build this in, right? So, like, if you wanted to sort of hide the redstone, right, you can use solid blocks, whatever decorative solid blocks. Just remember, if you completely encase it, you need some light in there, right? So that's why we put those green frog lights right on the edge there like that. But yeah, it's safe to build, kind of encase this if you want. It should work just fine. And then if you really wanted to go full blown hide everything, right? You could just add another layer of solid blocks on the very outside of this, like so. There's no harm in doing this, so make it your own, right? So there you'd have, like, you know, you could make the tower look exact however you want, right? You're just adding one, you know, one layer and one block layer around the outside, right? But yeah, again, especially for this bottom level, right, it's really important that there's enough light in there for your pumpkins and melons to grow, right? So if you completely black it out in there, they're not going to grow. All right, next is the behemoth here. It is simpler than it looks, I promise you. There is an on-off switch available, right? So if you get sick of the pistons firing, right, or if you're just overflowing with, you know, pumpkins and melons, if you've got too many, right? So this is basically off of a 9x9 farming area. And then here's kind of what here's the materials you're going to need for at least the first level, right? So for each level, you're kind of going to need to, you know, pretty much double everything you see in here. I think the 2 stacks of rails, you might not need that many rails, but you do need the 37 activator rails and at least the 24 powered rails for sure. Definitely need jack-o'-lanterns for this one. Levers, redstone, dust, and a repeater and a comparator. And then whatever solid block you want to use, and then glass, and then you're going to need at least 1 half slab per level as well. Right, so this is kind of a little bit bigger than we actually need here, right? It's basically a 9x9 farmable area that we're going to be building out. And so I'm going to actually put the chest here at this level because all of our rail is going to go on the next level up, right? So I'm going to clear a little bit of this out. And then we're going to build our minecart unloader, so comparator looking away. And then we're going to make a T out of solid blocks here, redstone, dust on the top. And then you actually do need a redstone torch right there. And powered rail here on top of the hopper. You also need an activator rail here, right? Bedrock Edition's a little fussy when it comes to minecart unloaders. So we're going to clear out a little bit of extra space behind this sort of system here. Right, so this activator rail will trigger a redstone signal when the minecart goes over it. Redstone dust all like this, and then repeater into that block there. So basically the way that's going to work is it's going to trigger the unloader a little bit sooner and make sure that that powered rail is off by the time the minecart gets over top of that unloader, right? So it's just an easy fix for a minecart unloader. Then this is 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 5th one, you want powered rail. 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we're going to go back. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th one is going to be powered rail right in the middle. 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? So do that all the way across, so that you have a 9x9 area, right? Repeat this pattern. So it should look like this. Right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? 9x9 is what you want this rail section to look like. 9. Right? And then you're going to have that at the end. That is fine. You want that. And then underneath the spots where the powered rail are, you do need to put levers so that the powered rail is actually powered. And then make sure you flip them on as well, right? So lever here on every single one of these. This is right below the powered rail. So once you're done with that, you should see that the powered rails are lit up. And there you have it like that. Right, so this is where you could you know, if you wanted to expand on this, right, you could build another 9x9 right next to this, right? You could continue out this way and make your, you know, basically make your each, you know, make it 18x9, right? Like make it, you know, just basically double the length. And you could expand this, you know, infinitely however you want. My recommendation is just to go up. And so, like, I think it's just going to work better for going, like, making more and more levels. So I would build the 9x9, but it is completely expandable in any direction you want to go. But yeah, my recommendation would be to just build more levels. At some point, you're going to have too much stuff in your minecart unloader or your minecart, right? So you have to kind of keep that in mind. You might have to build another separate minecart path with a separate minecart unloader at some point. But dirt in the corner here, we don't want to do the full layer of dirt. We want to build up like this 3 blocks above that, right? So put dirt on top of the first corner and then get rid of those 2. This is going to be the level that our pistons are going to be underneath, right? So build these out 9 out each direction, right? So it lines up above your rails. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's lined up above the rails, right? You want 9x9. And this level here is actually going to be temporary. So if you wanted, you could build it out of dirt. But go in and fill that in completely. And then this is going to make life really easy for us to place our pistons. So for your pistons, you don't want to start in the corner. You want to start next to the corner, okay? And then it's just going to be a checkered board, right? If you start in the corner, that's going to screw up. You're going to have a piston over top of a useless water source block, right? So make sure you don't start in the corners when you're placing your pistons. But then after that, you're going to just, it's easy, right? Just do a checkered board pattern. Every other block is pistons. So fill that in like so. Right, so once you're done with that, should look like this, right? So pistons everywhere. Every other block, just big checkered board patterns, right? So now we can start filling in our dirt. Don't fill in the whole thing, right? But this is going to be a 9x9 area because right in the middle, we need to place a water bucket. And I'll show you how to do that. So this is where you're going to need your slabs. You want to get the very, very middle, right? So you want to go 4 rows in. So we'll build out the first 4 rows of dirt here like this. I think we're at 3 here, right? 1, 2, 3. Yep. And then you can tell the middle by looking at the powered rail below. So this is where our water is going to go. So we're going to put our half slab at the bottom, right? Just like that, right? Lower half slab there. And then now we can fill in the rest of the dirt. You could put the water in now, but it's easy. It's just as easy to put it in once you get above, right? So just double check and make sure you're in the very middle of the farm. Otherwise, basically what's going to happen is you're not going to have all of your farm soil area saturated, and that's going to slow down the growth. Right, now you can get rid of that temporary layer of blocks, like so. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our water in there and start planting, right? But you should have it look like this. Right, so the reason we're doing it like this, right, if you're doing it in survival, right, this way it's a little bit easier to do the planting from up here, right? So you're going to basically plant a plant anywhere there's not a piston. So we're going to put our water bucket in there like so, on top of that half slab. And the reason we're doing this, right, is because this is how, like, farmland saturation works, right? So I've got, this is, 10 by 10 or something, right? So this is, right, so you can see the 9 by 9 area with the water source in the middle has saturated farmland, right? So that's going to make the pumpkins and melons grow much, much faster to be saturated. And then just the unsaturated farmland doesn't grow as well, and it's just so you want it to be water absorbedness, right? And then basically you also have to watch out for not falling down in between these, right? Because you're either gonna have to try and figure out how to jump out and fly out with elytra, or destroy part of your farm or whatever. So what I recommend doing is crouching on top of the pistons, and that way you'll walk slower, but you'll be able to guarantee that you won't fall off the edge, right? It's a little trick. If you're crouched, it won't let you walk off an edge. And so then basically anywhere there's not a piston, we're going to put a pumpkin or melon plant, right? And so again here, what I've been doing is alternating each row pumpkins and then the next row melons, right? So you're going to see me do all melons this row, and then we'll do all pumpkins on the next row. We did all pumpkins on the first row. So just do that until you've filled everything in, so you have a plant underneath each open spot, and then make sure you've got your water source block in the very middle. So right, we've got everything planted now. And then here's where you're going to want a light source block, right? So anything that's, I recommend the jack-o'-lanterns just because they're easy, right? They don't have to be perfect here, right? You just need a few of them in there to make sure that your farm is lit up. And then the other places you can fill in whatever solid block you're building with, right? So like that, right? So just make sure you don't use, I think, sea lanterns, right? Don't use sea lanterns. Make sure you're using any other light up block, right? The jack-o'-lanterns work fine. Now we're going to build our ramp going up to the next level. So 3 in, and then we're going to start making the ramp. And then there'll be 3 blocks at the top like so. And then we need our minecart rails. And then I use powered rails going up like that. And then you're going to want to put a lever underneath these powered rails. Boosh. That way it's going to bring the minecart up to the next level. And then here's where things get a little tricky, right? You're going to have to pay attention because I actually I have to correct myself a couple times here, right? But this is where you're going to need the activator rails and the powered rails, and you need to put them in the right combination here, right? So we're going to activator rails between each piston, right? And then powered rail there, activator rail there, regular rail, activator rail, regular rail we can turn. We're going to want activator rail here. We'll do regular rail. Right, I just do 1 powered rail at least per each row just to make sure it's moving. And when you do put a powered rail in, you need activator rails on each side of it, right? So just like I'm doing here. And then you want activator rails where basically where there's, in the places where there's not pistons, right? Like so. So we'll do this whole thing just so that you can make sure you're doing it exactly how it needs to be. If you have a activator rail or powered rail right in any of the wrong spots, you're going to have it where, like, so, pistons aren't going to work or your minecart's going to get stuck, right? Activator rail, regular rail. Nope, see, I screwed it up again. We need our powered up. Now I'm really breaking stuff. Now we're really breaking stuff. All right, we need our, like that. Activator rail there is in the right spot. Regular rail, activator rail. Then we can do powered here. Activator rail, regular rails to turn around. Activator rail, regular rail, activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, regular rail, activator rail. And then our turn, activator, regular, activator, powered, activator, regular to the turn. And then activator rail here. Right, so you kind of get the pattern, right? Basically you need an activator rail between, with the exception of the where you're turning around, right? That'll be fine there like that. But you basically need activator rails between in every spot where there's not pistons, basically, right? And then like that. So that is how that is. Right, so yeah, so, and then for your powered rail, you definitely need activator rails on each side of the powered rail. Otherwise your minecart's going to get stuck, right? And then, yeah, activator rails basically in between every spot that is not a piston, with the exception of the edges here, like this, right? Where the minecart's turning around. So it should look like this, right? So you could pause it there to make sure you do it right. And then next is going to be the exact same thing that we just did here, right? So we'll go through it again, right? But you're going to put your dirt down, and then 1, 2, 3 blocks like that. Get rid of those middle 2. And that's where you're going to start putting your pistons up against this one, right? So this is going to be another temporary layer. So if you wanted to build it out of dirt or something else, you could, right? But exactly the same thing, 9 by 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh no, wait, 9 there. Right, you're gonna have an extra like little bit of ledge here, right, because of the ramp going up, right? You don't want blocks over top of the ramp. You want it just over the 9x9 area. So fill that in again, and then again, pistons don't start in the corner. And then it's every other one. Do your checkered board again, pistons pointing down. Right, so fill that in. Like so. And then again, now we can fill in the dirt, and make sure, right, you need to remember to leave the very middle block here, right? So you only need it over the farm part of the edge, not over the ramp part there. We'll do 4 rows again, and then the very middle block again is going to be where we place our source block for water. So you'll want your half slab and water bucket ready. Right. You could, once you've got that half slab, you could put the water in now if you wanted to. It's just kind of hard to get up there, right? It's easier to do it from above. So I've just been filling in the rest of the row, the rest of the level here, right? 9x9, 9x9, right? Don't forget 9x9. And then, yep, get rid of that temporary row again. And then same thing here, right? We're going to place our water block on top of that half slab. That will saturate that entire level for farmland. And then we're going to do the exact same thing here. Crouch while you're doing this, right? You can do, we'll do all pumpkins for this first row here. And then we'll alternate melons for the second row. So use your hoe, plant the seed. Use your hoe, plant the seed. Right, so do that for the whole level again. Right, so now we've got everything planted again. We've got our water source in the middle there like so. And then again, you're going to want your at least 4 jack-o'-lanterns, right, to make sure that this is lit up enough. It's not super critical exactly which spaces you place it on, right? I just try to kind of evenly space these out so that there'll be enough light within the farm to make sure the pumpkins and melons can grow. And then you're going to want to put in your whatever solid block you're building with in all the other places, right? So, boosh, again, there's our 9x9 farm. And then now we're going to build the ramp going up for the minecart again, right? 3 blocks first, then start the ramp. And then you'll have 3 blocks at the top, right? And these were temporary ones. We don't need these. Pushed the wrong button and fell. All right, here we go. Here's our turn. Then again, we're going to use our powered rail going up. Then we can switch back to regular rail and point in like that. And then put your lever underneath somewhere. Just be careful you don't put it by a place that would power a piston, right? So like, don't put it here because that's going to trigger that piston, right? That's bad, right? So just make sure you're not messing anything up, right, when you turn it on. That looks fine like that. And again, this is like almost the same pattern, except we're starting from the other side here. So you do have to, it's going to be just slightly, I think it's slightly the opposite or different, right? So, and then again, we want to make sure we've got at least 1 powered rail for each row, just to make sure that minecart keeps moving, right? So every other one. And then your activator rails in between the pistons, except for the edges where we're turning, right? So I should have put an activator rail there, and I didn't. So we'll do that. Activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, regular rail, activator rail, and then our turn. Activator rail, regular rail, activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, and then our turn. Activator rail, regular rail, activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, regular rail, activator rail, then the turn. You get the idea here, right? So again, you just need to make sure you have activator rails in every spot where there's not a piston. And then you need at least 1 powered rail between 2 activator rails for each row to make sure that minecart keeps moving. So we'll build this out the rest of the way. just in case you're following along, because this is kind of the probably the most critical part here. Yep. Activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, right? And then you need to make sure that each powered rail especially has an activator rail on each side of it. Activator rail, powered rail, activator rail, regular rail there. And then our turn. Like so. And then, you know, you would basically, right, if you're done, once you're done building levels, I would build it out a couple blocks like that. Otherwise it kind of screws up the turn before. Put a lever there and then a couple of powered rails here like this into that, right? If you put it right on the edge, I was having issues with the minecart screwing up the turns there, right? So make it sure it sticks out a level, right? But this is it. You're done now, right? So you put your hopper minecart on the rail there, and then basically just, actually, we already have a melon growing in it, right? And then this would be your on-off switch, right? So if you don't want the minecart to move, you would basically use that lever and turn that redstone torch off, and then once the minecart comes back, it'll just stay there indefinitely until you flip that lever again. Otherwise, just leave it on, and then it'll come back, unload the unload its hull for that run, and then it'll automatically start moving again once it's emptied out. So yeah, give it a test run there like that. Right, we've got quite a bit of stuff in here, right? So I'm gonna actually, I'll kind of show you how this unloader works, right? So I grabbed some extra pumpkins and melons here. We'll throw them on the rack, on the rail here. So that way it'll pick these up when it comes back, right? But it does have a few in there because there's some melons in there. I see some. Took us that long to build this thing. Right, so then the very bottom level is not activating pistons. It's just a cleanup level to collect. And then, it didn't get all of them. I think there's too many in one spot. But right, see how this is working? So these items are falling through, and that's actually too many now at this point. And then they're going to go into the chest for you. And then the moment that minecart is empty, it'll start moving automatically again, just like so. Right, so if you build this version of this farm, one chest is going to fill up obnoxiously quickly, right? So you're going to want some extra storage. So feed this into some sort of storage system or build out just massive amounts of chests under this, right? So I'll show you how you can connect all these together. We're going to have to do some cleanup on this redstone here. But basically, right, dig down. We'll replace. Let's see if we can get it replaced before the minecart comes back here. So we'll have to fix that. But yeah, put your... basically what you'll do, you want your chests on the other side. So we'll put chests in here like this. Right, and then go back behind it, and then you'll do, you need hoppers, like so. Make sure to crouch to place hoppers pointing into those chests, like that, right below your unloader, and then we'll fill this back in, see if we can get this redstone back in here before the minecart comes. Perfect timing, right? So now that those are all linked together now, right? So it'll put them in the bottom chest first, and then once the bottom chest is filled up, it'll put them in the middle chest. Then it'll use that top chest last, right? So you could build that as deep down as you wanted to. And then alternatively, right, you can use observers to, you build the same 9x9 surface here and then use observers on top of where the plants are planted. And then this way, the nice thing about this version of the farm is the pistons aren't firing constantly. It's only firing pistons, and the appropriate pistons too, or the ones where a plant has grown, basically, right, where a pumpkin or melon has grown, right? So you won't have the constant mashing of piston sounds as your minecart goes around. It is a little bit less compact is the only difference here, right? There's an extra level in here for the observers, and how you would power them is kind of the only difference here, right? But you've got observers that looking down at each plant, and then you have your pistons, right? So we built it the exact same way. And the minecart rail and all that other stuff is the exact same as well. Then I do have in the very middle, above where the, above where the water source block would be, right in there is a jack-o'-lantern, right? And so you may need to add some lights around the outside of this, right, depending on what you do with this farm, just to make sure that, you know, if you encase it in something or build it in underground or whatever, right, you may need to add some lights. And then for the middle rows for the minecart, you would have to use redstone blocks, and you want to make sure the redstone blocks are above the solid blocks where the pistons are. Otherwise, it's going to mess with the redstone above the observer, right? So here, I'll just kind of show you what I'm talking about, right? So that's going to trigger that, and then that's going to trigger those pistons, right? So you want to make sure you have your redstone blocks there like that for your powered rail, right? So you'd have to do your powered rail with redstone blocks instead of levers, because there's just not going to be room for them on those rows. You could still do the bottom, the very first row with the levers. I think that's what I did, but that's kind of how that works. And oh my gosh, why is this rail unpowered? What happened, little guy? I don't understand. It should be powered. I'm going crazy, right? That should be powered, right? All right, we're gonna break this lever. It was totally working before. All right, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna fix this right here. All right, get there. We're gonna push him, get him going. Maybe we just put the lever in a different spot. It was working before. All right, I'm not crazy. You guys saw it, right? All right, put the lever there. That should be really. It really shouldn't matter where you put the lever, as long as you don't put it next to where a piston would be, right? Because that would screw up the. That would extend the piston, and then that spot would never grow a pumpkin or melon, right? So it works there. That's fine. Now it's all powered. But that's how you would do that one there. And then, yeah, you could, you know, if the minecart unloader goes up one level as it goes above the hopper, or the hopper, right, then you don't need the extra, like, activator rail with that little bit of extra redstone. I just like how, like, it's just cleaner for me the other way, right? Because the hopper minecart will sit there, like, right on the teeter on the edge. But yeah, you can do it just a little bit differently, right? Bedrock's a little bit picky. And then another side note too, right, if you really want to kind of make sure you get the best rates, you could enclose each level of, you know, farmland here with some glass, right? You just kind of got to be careful not to cut off your hopper minecart, right? So make sure it's got enough space to go up and down. I always kind of leave a little bit extra space here, right? So you got to be careful not to, make it so it'll get stuck. Make sure there's plenty of room. And it wouldn't matter if pumpkins or melons fell out on that side, because the hopper minecart goes over there anyway. But yeah, you could totally just encase this in glass. And again, if you wanted to make sure everything was lit up, you know, every few blocks you could put a light block, or right, like a jack-o'-lantern or something. Right, so I would recommend doing that. I didn't notice too many blocks falling off the outside of it, but you do you. It's not important. It's not 100% necessary. That's going to be our video for the day, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That helps me out so much. Please do consider subscribing. I really do appreciate that. And if you want to see farms or anything else, leave what you would like to see in the comments for me. And I will kind of take a look and see what I think works best for, you know, my sort of play style here, right? But that's going to be it, right? Make sure you're following. We'll see you guys next time.